We have numbers of members from the Netherlands. Among them is Gus van der Velds, who you actually going to have talk about some interesting project tomorrow. So yeah, practice. What I frame as a really interesting development in the last, let's say, 10 years in almost a global scale is that we have the onset of urban farming as something of an interesting new development around food production. And of course, urban farming is not a new concept. It has been around for a long time. Most cities, would not be thinkable if, with some form of urban farming in the historic context. And, when the onset of modern agriculture, we obviously, kind of dismantled a lot of those urban farming concepts. And we also removed the kind of end consumer from being involved in either understanding or even doing partially some of the growing of food products. We are a industry association based in Belgium. We try to tackle the topic of CEA, which is Controlled Environment Agriculture, which is a kind of a segment in technology-driven growing of food fiber and medicinal products, including insects, alternative proteins, but also a lot of high-value nutritional food products like salads, herbs, tomatoes, cucumbers, you name it. We are a relatively young industry and a relatively young organization. We were founded in November 2018, based in Brussels. We are going to open our first office in the US and plan to expand into Asia. We see our role as a very important stakeholder organization to have an umbrella function and help navigate all the challenges which are facing any kind of entrepreneur or organization or consumer or farmer when he becomes engaged in agriculture. Because it is starting out from an innovation point of view and also with a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of ideas around urban farming, particularly. It is a rather daunting undertaking when you really read the realities of what it means to grow food and do that successfully. Next slide, please. So I always like to bring this chart from Harvard University, which was published in a paper in 2018. It does not say anything about sustainability in the food production, but it does show that we're far from really an ideal diet based on our current agriculture production systems. The blue bars you see on the right, on the left, sorry, are the actual production data sets from the FAO. And on the orange side, the orange bars are the recommended diets based on what we really do need to eat in order to keep everybody healthy, strong, and live productive lives. And what it's really striking, we can go on for a long time and looking at this and make interpretations, but what is really striking is that we need to triple our production on fruit and vegetables. It doesn't really make any sense because it's common knowledge to a lot of people, particularly in the industrial world, that fruit and vegetables are very healthy and very influential in the overall health in your diet. So having that on one side of the equation, meaning that we need to triple our fruit and vegetable production, is already a serious challenge because today we grow a lot of fruit and vegetables, but are they really truly sustainable and are they nutritious? These are all questions which are now currently, particularly thanks to our work by the European institutions, are really evaluated and also analyzed and put forward in the new food to farm farm to fork initiative. On the other side, we have also the drama of the climate change, who's making farming extremely harder. And particularly in the closer you come to the equators, you have major changes in all the practically in all the farming activity. And what it also means for urban farming, it's also an interesting phenomenon. We found out that the urban heat island effect, which means that the urban environment is heating up to a degree that it actually changes the weather pattern for an entire region, has a function for agriculture outside the urban environment as well. Because as we had in Europe the last 3 summers, as everybody remember, particularly the summers 2 years ago, where the entire northern half of Europe like dried up, like as if it was a savanna, and none of the farmers who traditionally were always like blessed with endless rainfall, like we are in Belgium, for instance, had to struggle with having no water available for anything. So these challenges obviously are really, really massive. They're also on a global scale. And I'm very happy to see urban agriculture as a driver to really bring forth these discussions about what we need to recognize as a serious problem and a challenge, and where are possible solutions. And this is obviously a complicated affair, and it will take a lot of efforts to do it. But I am encouraging everybody to really believe that we can do it, because we have obviously always had the technology to do the right thing. But we need to have also the political will, and we need to have the consumer understanding how to do this sustainably and how to do this efficiently, so that we can actually transfer the agriculture sector from a really massive greenhouse emitter into a sustainable, a resilient sector. Next slide, please. So we have looked at, the entire space. We have been founded by a number of experts who've been in agriculture on multiple levels. We also have membership organizations and companies who have identified the lack of common approach to things as a major target, and helped us support founding of FarmTech Society and create our ecosystem. And we need to grow in the next years substantially in order to really have an impact on all the discussions. Right now we have representations from all sorts of sectors, but our aim is really to represent the interests of the emerging CA industry and include all sorts of stakeholders in order to really comprehensively drive this convening of the different ideas and discussions onto a solution around the topics of challenges. And here's a short list. I mean, it kind of includes pretty much anybody you can think of. We did not include a lot of technical details into who we actually identified, but these are the main bodies we think we need to really reach out to and engage in order to have a meaningful discussion and analyze the possible solutions. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. So it's obviously a big task, and we, as an umbrella organization, have found that it's probably much more interesting and important to focus on a few important things and try to focus on that and try to be effective. And we identified 3 pillars which we see are really crucial to develop further progress on these different discussions, particularly around urban farming. The lack of standards and the lack of understanding of certification is a major topic, and we see that this is something we need to really put a lot of efforts in, and also reach out to a number of cross-sectorial stakeholders. Then the other equation is, of course, tied into standards, but it's also the lack of training possibilities. And today we have the pandemic, and a lot of people are literally out of work and wondering if this government support systems will ever going to end, what they're going to do. And we have an opportunity here also to offer agriculture as a possible new professional career, and also as a future. And for that, we need to ramp up seriously the different institutions and different centers of excellence, create centers of excellence to really train people, and also make sure that they're trained in a unified and beneficial way, so that the regulators, policymakers, and also the industry can bank on a meaningful development of hard and soft skills so you can hire these people. And then obviously the policy aspect is a really important one, because if you don't pay attention to how policy is shaped, you're really missing, at least 50% of any meaningful impact. And that means also a lot of work on the information dissemination and, engaging with the policymakers on multiple levels and introducing new technology-driven models, which are quite amazingly sustainable and also can provide a lot of interesting regional functions in urban agriculture, peri-urban agriculture. Next slide, please. This is a list of our current state of affairs with all the different types of members we have attracted. They all are more or less filling those stakeholder groups. Some of them are heavily represented, others are not. And we're still continue to seek out more support and a broader approach from lots of different representation. So I'm asking this group to also consider joining our organization, because it is very important that we are having this broad footing and we have attractive different models of engagement. It doesn't mean that you have to come up with an expensive budget to really be part of this association. Next slide, please. With our pillars, we created committees which are driven also by stakeholders or not necessarily part of our FarmTech Society. And this is a little roadmap, and we are proud to say that in the short existence, we are actually have been able to launch a Erasmus Plus public funded project around an online training set for a professional profile called hydroponics technician. We did this as part of a 3-year-long initiative with partners from Latvia, Bulgaria, Italy, Greece, and Belgium. And this course is currently available online. It's free of charge, and it provides a very basic understanding what you need to consider to enter this hydroponics practice. We intend to build on that and make that a more broader base, also with different modules, and getting more and more involved towards an online community who is interested to learn online, but also create the physical facilities where we will do the Center of Vocational Excellence training. Next slide, please. And then we have the policy committee, which is also equally important, particularly also for this group. And we were just 2 weeks ago awarded a partnership in the Interreg project, which has been in existence for 3 years for the northwestern part of Europe, where they are trying to aim to find a way of making a rooftop greenhouse construction feasible in an urban and peri-urban context, based on the possibility of reducing the CO2 footprint of the building the greenhouse sits on top. We are now part of a new recapitalization round, which is also including other regions, namely the Netherlands, UK, and Ireland, where we will be also looking at greenhouse applications with the same premise, which are not sitting on the rooftop, but are built next to the facilities who are emitters of carbon emissions. And I'm really excited that we're part of this, because this is really exactly a practical example of how FarmTech Society will take a big role, or trying to take a big role, with the support of our membership base, which has a lot to bring to the table around all this topic of utilizing CO2 emissions in the growing of plants in an indoor environment. We can actually accelerate the biomass of any, on average, of any indoor grown plant by feeding CO2 to the plant. And that is, of course, a massive difference compared to not using CO2. So there is an interesting possibility to explore a function of being also a carbon CO2 harvest from like an emission, and utilize that that CO2 in the growth of a plant product. Next slide, please. This is my final slide. So I would like to call on each and one of you and your institutions to come and visit our website. Reach out to me, write to me. I would love to hear also how this project you're engaged in is progressing and how we could possibly discuss partnerships or share resources or collaborative in many ways. I'm really fond of your work and I congratulate you. I think it's very important. It's really crucial. I see the future of urban farming as one of the lighthouse functions to also allow the transition, of regular agriculture practice in rural areas to learn from that and also be influential in many ways from multiple point of view. Needless to say that the greening of cities, which could be also utilized by urban agriculture, could also help mitigate those urban heat island effects. And there are interesting, projects in the Middle East where we are going to align with some of the efforts of trying to go into cities where there is such a huge temperature difference between daytime and nighttime, and also the impossibility of having any water available to grow anything, that you need to tackle almost like Mars-like conditions to come up with like a greening of a potential of greening of that particular city to make it cooler and make it more livable and make it actually more healthy. It's known that greening cities actually provides enormous boost to the life quality of the urban citizens, and not also have an influence in the regional climate, which is an interesting thing to realize. With that, I want to close and I'd be happy to answer any questions.